This is just heading west from Santa Fe. I woke up early one clear morning at about 6 o'clock, pre-flighted the small plane that I fly, and these were the first pictures I took of this trip that I'm about to show you. My name is Craig Peyton. I'm an aerial photographer and a musician. And in June 2021, after my vaccination, I thought I was finally free to do something I had planned over a year ago, which was to visit my son in LA when he graduated from college. That got put off, but I decided a year later it would be fun to go visit him and do some photography on my way across. I chose some of my favorite subjects, and I was using a new camera technology called a 360 virtual reality cam, in my case an Insta. What I didn't expect, as I worked my way across the country and through some of the national parks that have always been wonderful places to photograph, I didn't expect to run into such a distressed and obviously impacted situation in the American Southwest. So this video is going to be a combination of both those things, of the photography that I love in an area that's absolutely topographically unique, but also talking about some of the things I discovered during a record heat wave and understanding that the very long-term drought was making a huge impact on the area. Right now I'm flying a small single-engine plane called a Mooney 201. And it cruises at about 180 miles an hour. I've owned and operated the same aircraft for 42 years, doing a lot of my own maintenance, and it's a very efficient flying machine. It was already obvious that this record heat was changing the way my plane flew. Density altitude gets worse and worse, with heat affecting both the wing and the engine. Literally, off my performance charts in the handbook that I carry in the plane. But I'm aware my plane is underpowered and not really suited for this environment in many ways. Nevertheless, the morning light is beautiful and we continue to push west, climbing up over the Bandelier to the red rocks of Sedona, Arizona. Well, the first morning of serious photography, I was in Sedona visiting friends, and once again, it was just an absolute scorching situation, but I was excited because the red rocks of Sedona are famous and very fun to view from an aircraft because you can kind of take in the whole area quickly. Now, it seems like there's nothing on the wing of my plane except a little duct tape, but in reality, there's a small mount sticking out. You can see the shadow on the wing shadow. The way the images overlap to make a 360 photograph, it deletes the camera mount. But as you can tell, because this airport is U-shaped in this picture, that I'm showing a lot more than a normal camera view. I'm literally wrapping the picture around as you see it, as you see the aircraft taking off. I've shot Sedona many times through the years and I love it. It's a wonderful place, but in spite of seeing vortexes and crystals and lots of people that love to move there for any number of reasons, it's an area under stress. I understood this right away from visiting my friends. People fleeing the large cities have been pouring into these smaller areas and congesting and buying up everything in sight. And that mixed with 105 to 110 degree weather in Phoenix, they were starting to stop some flights, made taking off and landing a little bit frightening. And it also made performance issues much more concerning. Now, as I'm heading east right now and then curving up through the valley, you'll see the haze, which is from smoke. And just a day after I left, they actually closed the whole area because of extreme fires. These beautiful rocks make this area so unique. And if you look up at the picture on the upper left from center, that white stripe is the airport that I just took off from. It creates this magical valley and eons for the erosion to turn these rocks into the structures you see now. The red is from iron that's in the rock. But extreme drought means that they've started water restrictions, and of course with the fires, there's been unprecedented burn in the whole southwest region. This was the last leg of my cross-country first part of my trip. So I didn't land again until I got to LA. I finished flying low to get these photographs, and then I just moved up to about 11,000 feet to finish my trip into the LA basin. But I was absolutely shocked that the temperature never went down below 90 degrees, even up high, which I've never experienced before. And of course, that greatly impacted the aircraft performance and ability to have an air-cooled engine working at that altitude. The plane, which was built in 1979, was simply not designed to handle this kind of environment. Now, as I pull back on the edit to show you more and more of the full image, of course, it's adding a lot of distortion, but you're kind of seeing like a bird sees, and two hemispheres being stitched together instead of just looking straight forward. I long ago learned with photography that it's a lot easier to shoot ugly than it is to shoot beautiful. Ugly's all over our environment, and you can see any number of scars and effects that we've given to our little planet. Beauty, on the other hand, you gotta work for. You have to get the right light, you have to get up sometimes very early, and you have to have a little bit of an eye. So my opinion is mostly observational. It's not really based on scientific merit, if you will. It's just based on spending 40 years looking down at the Earth and watching the changes. After visiting my son, the next thing I did was fly to the West Grand Canyon Airport, landed and put my camera on the wing. Again, you can see the shadow there. And this is speeded up because the Grand Canyon's pretty big. And so we're going 4 times my normal cruise speed, or about 500 miles an hour in this case. By the time I got to the Grand Canyon Airport, at that point it was breaking records with the heat. Every day were new records, and a lot of concern how it was affecting the fire season as well as the lack of water. And it was already quite violent with turbulence even at 9 in the morning when this shot was taken. So with a little bit of trepidation, I am flying over the airport at West Grand Canyon just to get a little altitude before I went into the canyon itself. Private pilots have to follow a very specific route through the canyon, so you're not going to see the standard canyon shots from the main lodge. For noise purposes and for traffic control, we have a routing that's specified, and that's what I was following as I flew through the canyon area. As I saw the edge of the canyon coming into view and realized with the kind of heat I was flying in and my engine overheating and the turbulence that there was no options for what would happen if my engine failed, I was a little bit nervous. Even though I've done this many times before, I guess conservative behavior does come with age in terms of how you fly an airplane. But the spectacular Colorado River below never fails to get your attention, and you just can't believe the amazing result in this unique, one-of-a-kind, incredible canyon that we have here in the United States. The smoke from the many fires burning further west were affecting the air, which is usually well over 100 miles of visibility. I was a little bit sad my photographs would always have this blue haze. And I kind of realized my photography trip was starting to move from the idea of documenting beauty to documenting something tragic happening to the Southwest United States. It's also this sense of 4 or 5 days I spent in LA reading about what was going on with the heat wave and trying to plan my trip, it was worse and worse. There was just no window. The heat kept coming on week after week. The sheer grandeur of the canyon spoke volumes about the endurance and tenacity of our planet. That's what I was here to understand. I think people learn the hard way most of the time. They don't learn the easy way. It takes a lot of trauma to change behavior in a meaningful way. When you see my hand going up like that, I'm hanging onto a structural part of the cabin to keep from getting thrown around too much. That heat smacking into my wings over and over again told me the land wasn't too happy with what my species were doing to it. I'd like to believe that we're smart enough to work with this beautiful home of ours. Without question, this tortured, wrinkled, carved part of the planet has had everything that could be thrown at it, with volcanoes and floods and oceans. It's going to do fine. The earth isn't going anywhere, and this land is just going to keep trucking right along. The real question is whether we'll be part of it. Continuing forward, now we're going over the Colorado River before the Glen Canyon Dam. And the Colorado River's looking pretty skinny, and it's parched down below. But the vastness and the majesty of the land just takes over, controls my eyes. I wonder what we would give. We talk about planets. We talk about going to Mars and terraforming Mars, and what we would give, what it would cost to see a river on Mars, to look down in one of the Mars craters and see this river, what that represents in value. Maybe we could start with terraforming the Earth. We have plenty of water. Those Great Lakes are real big. I'm sure we could have some robots dig a tunnel down to the southwest and turn this into even more a magnificent landscape. Well, after getting out of the plane in 110 degrees and putting a little fuel in, I'm back up in the air in the middle of the day, and it's hot now. It took me a good part of that 6,000-foot runway to take off, and now I'm going over Lake Powell, which has been making the news because it's only at 30% capacity. In the 110-degree heat that I was in, I couldn't even imagine what it must feel like to be driving a truck with a boat off to the boat ramp and knowing that it's pretty hard to get to because the water levels are dropping so quickly. Our human capacity of denial and how vast it is. Until this puddle is just about gone, we'll be out there doing our best to have a great day and enjoy it for that moment. The Glen Canyon Dam has changed a large area to let cities like Las Vegas prosper. But at what cost? Dams always ultimately fail. And there's certainly great concern when the water level is lower than any time since the dam was created. To the left was all water. As we move forward, you'll see where the lake's just drying up and leaving the famous bathtub ring. Up ahead on the horizon, you can see Navajo Mountain, Natsistan, which means head of the earth to the Navajo, and rises 10,400 feet to dominate this area from every direction. It's so ancient. Ever since I've been filming this area 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the magnificence of it pretty much just takes over my eyeballs. Now we're moving on to one of my favorite areas in the Four Corners region called Monument Valley on Navajo reservation land. And it's almost famous for what it doesn't have. It's a vast area of negative space. And I just find it completely captivating. Over the ridge coming up is Goulding's Lodge, an old trading post and a staging area for the early film industry that defined the look of the Southwest. It's got a small airport with a one-way landing because it aims you right into the wall, but it's been a great location and I've camped there many times in the past. Flying over here in 115 degree weather, I didn't even want to go any lower. That's the airport below, but it was so turbulent. I was worried about structural damage. So I remained a little bit high as I flew around Monument Valley, wondering if people would continue to occupy an area that was becoming so parched and distressed. You can see the so-called monuments up ahead, which are the remnants of volcanoes. But it's this placement in this giant ochre vast plain that makes it so dramatic in any light. Sunrise, sunset, winter, summer. It's a constant changing environment, and an airplane really is the perfect way to understand it. You can see from the heat there's very few cars down below, and the parking lot up ahead is virtually empty. I think it's too difficult during this period for people to drive around in the extreme heat. And I did feel rather alone as I got further away from any roads. But I almost see these famous mittens up ahead as the ancient sentinels, patiently waiting, not even blinking an eye for 10,000 years, watching it all go by. It's hard for me to emotionally say goodbye to this magnificent country, a land that inhabits my dreams. And as I head east towards Taos, landing out of the question with a kind of wind that was below me, in some ways I felt I was escaping a terrible tragedy of drought and heat. No country has the power anymore to clean the oceans or to scrub the atmosphere. It's going to have to be a global effort. How we achieve that, unfortunately, I think it's probably going to come from a lot of tragedy, and that's what we're seeing now. But I hope we wake up and understand what's reversible. And in the process of reversing the problems environmentally that we have, we can learn a lot about getting along with each other. So a lot of good can come out of the disasters that we're seeing, but we have to be willing to start to put our heads together to go that direction. It's always the best time to do the right thing and protect our little blue planet. Thanks for being on board.